segue into
smooth transition right there.
Yeah, smooth operator for once. Yeah. The Houston Texans, and we talked about this last week. CJ Stroud and the Texans team, since the first 2 weeks, everything has really changed. And actually, not just changed, they have dominated the last 2 weeks.
Yes.
They went on the road to Jacksonville and win 37-17 against a divisional opponent. Then you welcome the Steelers and win by 24 points at home. So 2 straight games of over 30. And CJ Stroud still, if I'm not mistaken, has tied the rookie record or surpassed it for most pass attempts without a interception to start his career.
Yeah.
Guy's balling out.
We've said it since week one. When we saw CJ Stroud against the Ravens, even though he lost that game, we saw some really serious flashes of some serious talent and just some really well thought out plays. He was reading his reads were great. So, and the accuracy is obviously there. It seems as if he hasn't really skipped that much of a step, or when it comes to like he didn't have to really adjust when he came into the league, really at all.
Well, the one thing that we brought up, and Rock, you mentioned just because covering the SEC yourself, that's a different beast down there. And the biggest knock to CJ Stroud and any quarterback coming out of Ohio State was how would they do against the next level of competition, and could they take that next step? And CJ Stroud played Georgia, which to me, arguably that was the national championship game, even though it was the semifinal. And CJ Stroud was sensational in that game. And ever since that moment, it kind of felt like something might go off for him. And then he got knocked down hard in the first quarter against the Ravens. But I'll tell you what, he made some incredible throws, didn't waver. And it really felt since that first game against Baltimore, he has continued to figure out what works for him.
And let's talk about that opening game to open the season against Baltimore. He throws for 242 yards, doesn't get picked off. He got sacked 5 times, but for the most part, he made really good decisions in that week 1. He didn't make decisions that really put his team in jeopardy to lose the game. I mean, the Ravens just went out. They had a plan, and they're so successful against rookie quarterbacks at home, and they went out and they just took it to CJ Stroud. So they did sack him 5 times, but he still threw for 242 yards, and he was 28 of 44. So that's fairly efficient, 63.6% completion percentage right there. And then you look at the games after that. 384 yards against the Colts, throws for 2 touchdowns. Then he goes to Jacksonville, 280 yards, 2 touchdowns. Then he takes on the Steelers, 306 yards.
Off platform.
The dude is the real deal, and he's playing fantastic to really start his NFL career. It's pretty cool to see.
I mean, sure. The hear me out last week was, and it's starting to make its waves right now throughout the talking heads, but my hear me out is that CJ Stroud, I think, would be better than Trevor Lawrence. And I already think that he is a superstar in the making and is going to be a problem for future AFC teams and for the conference moving forward. RG3 came out and talked about how he's a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. The reality is when you have a player that is unwavered, and that's what you're seeing with CJ Stroud, that's what you're going to see positive results. And then on top of it, this defense has pieces we talked about. Houston Texans are the top 10 in passing yards allowed. We talked about their secondary was stingy. Last game they allowed 111 pass yards.
Rip, do you want to know where CJ Stroud is as far as, you want to take a guess, even though you're peeking at my computer screen? You just saw it this time. As far as passing yards go right now?
Well, you know what? Give me the stat.
CJ Stroud is 4th in the league as far as total passing yards go. Average, per pass, he's number 3 with 8 yards per completion. Yards per game, he's number 4. Touchdowns, tied for 10th. So you talk about top 10 quarterback in the league right now. I don't think that's a stretch to say. I think CJ Stroud, still a lot of season left. We'll wait and see what that's, but I completely agree 1,000% that he is a superstar in the making.
Well, and in his teams that he's played so far, you played the Baltimore Ravens week 1. That's a AFC contender and whatnot. So he has a pedigree. Then you just went against the Steelers. You went against the Jaguars. And this is why we found the moment of talking about with McAfee here. We're talking about this, but listen for yourself, even though we've been saying this for a little bit. But this is what was just talked about on Pat McAfee today.
I think he's breaking like everybody's records right now. I think Cam Newton's the only one that he hasn't been able to surpass for some sort of record. He's a guy.
Yes.
And we saw him play against Georgia.
Right.
And we did a mega cast.
Yep.
And that was the game I guess he ran the most last year or whatever the case was. I don't know. I didn't do it. This is what Ohio State Buckeyes fans were saying. That's the most we've seen him use his feet in a long time. We're standing on the sideline, and I think it took us, 3 plays? We're that's an NFL quarterback right there.
Yep.
That guy, I would like him to be with the Indianapolis Colts. Then some testing results came out.
Yeah, the S2 deal.
The S2 thing, and then there was other stuff
Manning
coming out.
Passing Academy.
Which always, he didn't go to the Manning Passing Academy. It's like all these stories start coming out during the draft, the success of previous Buckeye quarterbacks. And it's like, through the first 4 weeks, this dude's an NFL quarterback already. I mean, he's already... Growing pains don't seem to be real. The way they protected against Highsmith and TJ Watt, it's like the Houston Texans are in a completely different spot than they have been in a while. And D'Amico Ryans and the boys down there need to be incredibly proud. Congrats, CJ and the Texans. You just completely demoralized Pittsburgh. You got one Steelers fan saying, fire Tomlin, I guess. And he's never said that.
Yeah.
Ever.
That was you.
I would never. Whoa, Tony.
So, I mean, and speaking of Tomlin actually said too that they were going to be making some changes. I wonder if Matt Canada is going to be a part of those changes for the Steelers.
Yes. That would be nice for Steelers fans. I think Steelers fans would be very happy if there was a change at the offensive coordinator position, because they ended up giving Matt Canada a bigger role with Kenny Pickett. And while Kenny Pickett did get injured, that bigger role, I know it was 1 week that he got to work with Kenny Pickett in that bigger role, but there's really been no changes to the Steelers offense. And it's kind of laughable right now for the Steelers fan base. They're frustrated with Matt Canada, and I think they're tired of him. I think they really do want to see him go, and they want to change at the offensive coordinator position. You saw it last year here in Baltimore with Greg Roman. And what happened? They ended up making a change. And I'm not saying that coaches are going to listen to their fan bases, but there is a lot of growing frustration with Matt Canada for the Steelers right now.
Well, you want to talk about this, the stats backing up your point right here.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh currently in passing yards per game. Sorry, I had it right here. My bad. Had it off on the wrong one. Passing yards per game. Here we go. Pittsburgh's 25th in the NFL with 184. And then rushing as well, they are 29th in the NFL. So if you want to put that together, 2 and 2 together, it's not very good. And if you actually want to go back to that Cleveland Browns victory that they had, 2 of the scores in that game were by the defense. It was the pick 6 to start the game, and then the sack fumble that led to a touchdown. So when you're looking at it, this Pittsburgh Steelers team's lacked their identity and lacked some continuity and stability. Yeah. They're 2 and 2. But it could be a lot worse given the fact that their offense hasn't gotten going.
Well, and Kenny Pickett 6, he just doesn't. I don't know. He had that one. To your point, the Browns game. He had that one big chunk play, and that was really passing.
That was on George Pickens. So.
But
Pickens took that
to the house.
Yeah,
but he was still wide open. I mean, he threw it over the top. Right.
Yeah.
And then, and that's the other thing too. The skill players for the Steelers haven't really changed. You had from last year. You have Najee, who could run the ball over anybody if he had the offensive line or the play calling to do it. And I would argue that George Pickens should be a top 10, if not maybe top 5 wide receiver. He is that talented. And I mean, we saw that from the preseason. And I thought, and Ryan and I talked about this, we thought the Steelers were going to be better than what pretty much all the other talking heads were. I mean, they had them last in the division, and I thought that was a bit harsh for the Steelers. And obviously, we're a quarter of the way through the season, so there's a lot of football left. But right now, I mean, the Steelers just look like they are a mess, and Tomlin's going to have his first losing season this year.
Well, that's the only thing I'll say this. Every time you think Pittsburgh's going to fall apart, they just don't. And so I'm not as concerned that they can't turn the ship around. Now, this game against Baltimore is massive for so many reasons. That's who the Steelers play next week, because the Steelers win that game. And if I do the math there, they're going to be sitting at 2-0 in the division, right? The Ravens win the game. The Ravens are 3-0 in the division. Not only are they 3-0 in the division, they'd be 3-0 on the road in the division. That means Pittsburgh, Cincy, and Cleveland all got to come to Baltimore to steal a game.
Yeah.
So a lot can ride on that, but the Steelers do find a way. It's just, you wonder, and I'll give a little bit of grace here to Matt Canada and the Steelers. And I know Steelers faithful and people might not like that. Look at the teams that they have played so far defensively. minus the Raiders. The Raiders, woof, and they put up some decent numbers. San Francisco's a top unit in the league. Cleveland is a top unit in the league, and the Texans are actually a pretty sneaky good team that's playing with a lot of confidence. So I'm not saying that you should be accepting what that offense is doing. You shouldn't, but they actually have played some better competition, especially on the defensive side.
Yeah. I mean, kind of hit the nail on the head right there. But that Browns game, that was won by the defense.
Yeah.
Highsmith's pick 6 to start the game. I mean, that really sparked the Steelers in that game. And then TJ Watt with that fumble recovery on Deshaun Watson taking it to the house. That is what won them the game. That was the final blow to the Browns in that game. But the frustration it's going to continue to be with Matt Canada if the play calling isn't there. Like there were fire Matt Canada chants at the Browns Steelers Monday night game. Fans are growing. There's petitions out there to get rid of Matt Canada, to fire Matt Canada. This fan base, they're frustrated and they'll pinpoint who the blame should be on. And right now, the majority, I feel like, of the Steelers fan base believe the blame should be on Matt Canada.